voices reached his ears, both of which Zayl recognized even through the door. His gloved fingers hesitated on the handle as he listened.
Justinian still insists on meeting him, Salene. I actually believe that he wants to give the man a medal.
Now, what would the church say about that, Torian? The king of Westmarch honoring a necromancer in the heart of their domain? The Securum elders would have fits.
There came a chuckle from the general.
Might be worth it just to see what they do.
Well, I can tell you that Justinian will have to be disappointed. Zayl would never accept such glories.
And what would he accept as a reward? Or should I say, who would he accept?
The Rothmanian deemed this the moment to open the door before the conversation turned very uncomfortable for all. General Torian and Selene stood just inside the sitting room entrance. Both turned in surprise toward the Rothmanian. The officer was clad as he had been the first time he and Zayl had met, save that this time he wore his helmet in even the presence of the Lady Nesardo. Zayl could hardly blame him. He suspected that many of the capital citizenry were keeping their heads covered after the horror of the week before. Selene's expression blossomed when he saw the Rothmanian, and he felt an unfamiliar lightness fill him. Maintaining a look of indifference despite his inner emotions, he bowed his head to her. She was clad in a wide, flowing gown of forest green and silver with ruffled trim around the shoulders and the bound bodice. Her hair tumbled down over both shoulders, and a string of pearls decorated her throat. Although Zayl had refused 3 invitations from Justinian IV to come to the palace, Selene had finally granted the king his request to see her. In this manner, she was able to explain matters to the satisfaction of the Westmarch's young ruler. She was also able to promise that what she knew of this part of the night in terror would never be spoken of her by to anyone. Justinian's guilt was great, but he had been manipulated in the most cruel fashion possible, and even Zayl saw no good coming from letting the truth be known. General Torian had the right of it when he had told them that Justinian's downfall would only mean more bloodshed and havoc than had already occurred.
Sorcerer,
Greeted Torian. General? Zayl returned, matching the other's brevity. To Selene, however, he said, I'm pleased that you arrived back so soon, my lady.
Are you really?
Her eyes sought to ensnare him. Steeling himself, the Rothmanian added, I would have hated to depart without a farewell. Behind her, Torian let a smile briefly escape. During it, he nodded to the Lady Nesardo.
I have to return to my headquarters, Selene. There's still much to clear up and many good men to replace.
Yes. I like Matthias among them.
Indeed. And now that the bodies of the dead have all been given their final rest, we gotta get to work on rebuilding the city.
He kissed her hand.
I'll be around soon. There's much we need to discuss.
To Zayl, he bid goodbye with,
Very well, sorcerer. And thank you.
The Rothmanian bowed his head slightly. Only when he heard the general depart the house did he start to explain. My work here is done. It is time I moved on. There are other emanations I sense. The balance is still threatened. Her eyes hardened. A look of determination filled her expression.
Then I'm coming with you.
Your part is done, my lady. It was enough that you managed to use your gifts to bring us, and Sardak, back here before the last of the temple collapsed, and then insist on taking care of my injuries? But enough is enough. It is time you lived your life as most should. Your brother is but 3 days buried in.
And so my life here has concluded. There is nothing left for me but this building, which I care little for now. You think I could return to what was after all that happened?
The necromancer shook his head. You must remain for the good of the kingdom. If nothing else, Justinian needs your guidance, and not merely from a loyal soldier like the general. He will need someone like you. She opened her mouth to argue more, but could not. Yet Selene did not entirely surrender.
He's a quick learner. He won't need much guidance long, and his father still watches over him, thanks to you.
Zayl said nothing, merely nodding his head. The shadow of Cornelius would guide his son for a time more before returning to its rest. Westmarch needed such stability, even if none would know the truth, save Selene and Torion. Determined to leave before matters got more complicated, the necromancer suddenly strode past Selene, moving so swiftly that the Lady Nesardo had to give chase. She caught him just as he opened one of the great doors leading out. Barnaby, whose duty it usually was to stand by for such a task, had not so curiously vanished just before the hooded spellcaster had come downstairs. Despite everything, the servants were still wary of the reputation of Zayl's kind.
One more thing before you go.
Said the noblewoman, catching his right hand without any sign of aversion for what lay hidden in the glove. He started to ask her what that one thing could be, and Selene kissed him lightly on the mouth. When she pulled back, there was a hint of mischievousness in her smile.
A little color serves you well. Just Zayl.
The hooded figure bowed his head, then quickly stepped out into the security of the night. At the last moment, he blurted, "Farewell, Selene." Tethered at the base of the outside steps was a fully laden horse, a horse once belonging to Sardak. Selene had insisted that Zayl accept the animal and what it carried, if nothing else. He had not argued with the gift. The animal and the supplies would be needed where he was going. The wind was strong, but the night was clear for the first time since his arrival. Zayl worked at the bound reins, finding them, for some reason, more knotted than they should have been. From the pouch at his side, a voice quietly said, "I'd wager my life and afterlife that she's still watching from the doorway, lad." "It's no concern of ours, Humbart." The skull let out a snort. "Oh, I believe that as much as you do, lad." The knot finally loosened. Undoing the reins, Zayl leapt up on the saddle. As he did, he could not help but catch a glimpse of the doorway. Humbart would have won his wager. Pretending he had not seen her, Zayl urged the horse down the pathway to the gates. Not at all to his surprise, they stood already open, likely at General Torion's suggestion. The guard pointedly found some other distraction to look at as Zayl approached. The necromancer quickened his mount's pace, but as he neared, Humbart muttered, "Look behind you, Zayl, lad. One last time." He did, and he saw that she still stood watching. Although Zayl gave no hint of this to his companion, the skull chuckled. "I thought so." The next moment, they rode past the anxious guard and through the gates. The darkness beckoned Zayl on as ever, both companion and adversary to the necromancer. And from across the estate of House Nesardo, a figure who resembled a mercenary with many faces but was so much more, watched the necromancer, the woman he had just left. They had been tested, and risen to that test. The Watcher nodded. A pair with potential. And true, he had aided a bit by guiding the Rothmanian's Night Howler to where the creature could be of most help to the duo. But it had been through their efforts, most of all, that the evil had been vanquished. It would be interesting to see how they fared when next brought together. With that thought, he spread his fiery wings and, unseen by all, took to the sky.